to do a neighbor to neighbor, a kind of a chain of trust build up, is what gives you a kind of a net to work from for sharing, spreading care, and encouraging care among others. So we know that every community is somewhat different. Each community has its own characteristics. The community around our particular core is kind of a what's called social housing, lower income people, retired elderly, many immigrants, large Muslim population. And over 10 years, we have built up a sense of relationship and trust through walking that neighborhood, doorstep conversations, greetings, using what we call the SALT methodology, which is a very open-ended, non-directive, non-sales style of interaction. That is a trust-building, appreciative learning methodology. Robin's going to be talking more about that, I'm sure. So what we've done in our own neighborhood is we reached out to some people that we know of who we've had long-term contact with and we see as neighborhood connectors. And we also did a walkabout our own neighborhood and saw who was talking to their neighbors and invited them into a meeting, which happened actually in just in time before everyone got discouraged from meeting at all, now to where we're actually in a state of lockdown here in the UK. So we had a meeting. We observed all the rules about social distance at that time, made a very wide circle, and we worked on what we each can do in our own neighborhood block. Our neighborhood has these large blocks of houses where people sometimes really stick to themselves and sometimes are good neighbors. And it's quite diverse in that way as well. So we encourage them, first of all, to contact neighbors, to have conversation about how people are feeling, first of all, to be reassuring, and then also to find out what people might be worried that they might not be able to do as things get more difficult. From that conversation, it becomes opportunity to show care in different ways. So there's first contact, then there's conversation, then there's care, and then there's connecting to either helping them out by going to get the groceries or whatever they need, or connecting them to something that's available. Yeah. And then finally for them to continue to do that and to kind of pass it on to others who might see that and feel that they could do it. Now, we looked at this as a kind of a chain of trust from who you know and then to who they know and to who they know, so that it's not an organizational, top-down driven kind of a thing. And so I want to just give you a quick example of one of the members of this group now. His name, can I give his real name? His name is Stuart. He would give his story very happily. And he's been connected to the Army for a good number of years. When we first met him, he was in a dark time in his life. He was probably one of the scary people in the neighborhood. And he is now in his recovery. He's a regular connector, volunteer at the Corps where he can, and has managed to get back into some degree of employment. So he has leafleted to his neighbors, and these are neighbors who have seen the change in him, and therefore they can accept his offer to be able to call him if they need anything, and he's willing to help. Now, Stuart wouldn't pass the requirements of a volunteer in an organizational response. If we were trying to gather a group of volunteers, call them volunteers, and take them through the process, Stuart wouldn't pass because of his background. But he does pass on the basis of somebody who's got a trusted an identity in his neighborhood as a good person and who's willing to do something. And so what we've done is create a little social group online on the phone that lets us talk to each other and encourage each other. We check in with him regularly, and he is just going to do what he is able to do in his own block. So one of the factors that we see largely, as Ian said, every person needs a conversation. That's because the anxiety of all this media is huge, and I think everybody is aware of that at this point. We get so glued to our phones and getting updates constantly, and this is actually an engine for anxiety. So let me just give you that good word. Ration yourselves on that and practice that discipline of silence and not taking in information constantly so that you can pass that on. We remember Second Corinthians chapter 1, get the comfort so that you can pass the comfort on. This is a spiritual discipline for a time like this for leaders. They need to be able to do this. As we gathered our group together at our hall, we had people from Muslim background, people of non-faith, and Christian people gathered together in our hall for that short time that we had together. And we were able to give them, if you just pass me my Bible, we were able to give them from Psalm 91, the last verses as a word for a time like this, which is to say, what does God promise us? Psalm 91 verses 14 through 16. And just encourage you to have a look at that, read that out, put your own name in there. But this is a word we've given to our neighborhood connectors to say God promises that when our love holds fast to him, God will deliver us and will lift us to safety as we call on God. God will answer. So just want to encourage you with that story. And the other thing is to keep it simple. Be an encourager and connect a chain of trust in our neighborhood is the grassroots effort that has to be undergirding whatever we're able to do in terms of provision of food and delivery of service.
And so remember, isolation doesn't mean lack of relationship, health, contact. Just have to work out how to do it. Second thing is, don't for a moment think that we as the Salvation Army need to hold ownership of this approach in neighborhoods. Neighbors will own their own future. The Holy Spirit is present in grace.
Thank you.
We have to follow that grace and find it with the neighbors. The Army can host gatherings, if they're allowed, safely. If the community centre is not there to do that, the Army team can help connect, stimulate, facilitate, nurture through ongoing conversation, face-to-face at safe distance, but also by social media. We've been doing that this morning before this interaction with you folks, actually, for an hour or so. And remember this.
2 hours or so.
Yeah, and remember this. Don't touch your faces. I think I've touched my face at least twice, if not 3 times. We're not allowed to do that. So God bless.
God bless.
Keep well.
Keep well.
Amen.